Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting Igbo tech tutorial where we build a music streaming website like Apple Music or Spotify completely from scratch. Now this is not going to be a build where we're going to be copying and pasting code. I'm going to explain everything step by step without skipping any step. Now let me actually take you through what we are going to build in this project. Now in this project, first of all, when we land to this project, we're going to refresh the web page. You're first of all going to see this loading screen right here, okay? And then it's going to pull this music from a Supabase backend. And obviously, you can actually click on any music to start actually playing the music. I'm going to click on this music right here. You can see that immediately the music starts playing. Now, you're obviously not going to hear the audio of the music because I have my microphone plugged in. You can control the audio of the music. You can take this to 0. You can see right now when we take this to 0, the music is actually muted. Now we can take this to maximum. Okay. Now you can click on this to actually open up your music queue. You can see right now the music queue you're actually playing. You see right now it's playing this music soundtrack. Now I'm going to click on this to actually go to the next music. So I'll click on this. You'll notice that it's going to go to the next music, Bicycle. And here you can see the queue list right here. Now playing Bicycle. When I click on another song, it's going to say now playing Smooth Siren. Now you can also play music from your own library. I'll click on one music from my library. I'll click on this right here. You can see right here that the music from my library starts playing. I can actually go through the music from my library. I can go to the next music in my library. Now since I'm at the last music, I can go to the next music. I'll go to the previous music. It's going to go to the previous one, which is Solidify. Now you're going to notice that every time we actually change a song, the details of the music player updates. Now when I go to the next song, you're going to notice that the name is going to change right here. I'll go to previous song, then go to the first or go to the previous song. You can notice that the details is going to actually be updated. And we can actually also trace where we want to play in the music and everything works fine. You can see the current time of the music, the total duration of the music. Now also we are going to implement repeat feature. Now when this music gets to the end right now since we have repeat on, when this music gets to the end, I'll take this to the end. You're going to notice that the music is going to start playing again. Let me do that again. When this music gets to the ending, you will notice that the music is going to start playing again. And also when we turn off repeat or turn off the repeat, I'll just take this to the ending. You're going to notice that it's going to go to the next song. Okay. We're also going to implement authentication in this project. So I'm just going to log out this user. I'll log out this user. Then I'm going to go to the login page. I can notice that immediately we log out this user, we no longer can see the music library of this user. This user, you can no longer see the music you've uploaded unless you log in. Okay. Now you can log in by clicking this, or you can log in by clicking this. I'll just click this to go to the login page. And in the login page, if you don't have an account, you can always click on sign up now to create a new account. Now we already have an account, so I just go to login now. I'm going to log in, say igmo@gmail.com. Then password, I'll use 00000000. I'll click on continue. I'm going to say login successful. Then it's going to take us back to the home page. Now this user right now I just logged in with, it's a different user, and this user only has 2 songs uploaded to your library. Now when I click on one of the songs from this user's library, you're going to notice that the songs actually start playing. I won't click on this. You're going to notice the queue right here, 2 songs from the user's library. Now if this user wants to play all the music in the platform, just click on the music from the new songs list. You can notice that it's going to have all the music to actually play. Now we will be able to actually upload songs too. So let's actually upload a song. So I'll click on upload. It's going to take us to the upload song page. Now I'm going to upload this song. I'll call this song Raz. I'll just call it a random. I'll call it Raz by artist. I'm going to say Igbo. Then I'm going to actually choose the audio file. So I'm going to click on choose file. I'll go to my desktop. Then I'll go to music streaming website assets. I'll just select an audio from here. I'll select any audio. I'll click on open. And I also have to choose a cover image for this song. So I'll click again. Then I'll choose a cover image. I'll just choose this. I'll click on open. Then I'm going to click on add song. After the song is uploaded, it's going to say song uploaded successfully. It's going to take us back to the home page. And you now notice that in these hot songs, we now have 6 songs. While this user now has 3 songs uploaded. Now let's actually play the song we just uploaded by Igbo. Now I'm going to click on this. I'll click on this. You're going to notice that the song actually starts playing right now. And we can increase the volume of the song. You can reduce the volume, you can mute the song. Now you can also mute the song by clicking on this. When we click on this, it's going to mute the song. And when we click, it's going to unmute the song. And when it unmutes the song, now I'm going to take this to around 75, or let me use 50. I'm going to notice that wherever I mute this song, when I unmute, it's going to take me back to that exact volume. I'll take this to 100. I will mute and I will unmute. It's going to take me back to 100. I'm going to teach you how to implement that functionality. Now, on top of that, users will be able to delete songs from their library, okay? Now, say I want to delete a song from the library, I just click on this trash icon. When I hover on this song, you can see that trash icon. So I just click on this trash icon, and it's actually going to delete the song right here. You can see that the song has actually been deleted. Now, if you've never worked on a full stack project before, and you don't understand anything at the back end, I'm going to explain everything. And also, this first part of this project is going to be strictly the UI and the front-end logic. So you really don't have to worry. But if you actually want to build the entire project with the backend with Supabase, I'm going to drop another version that's going to contain the complete build, and I'm going to also teach you how to deploy the application too. Now, if you're excited about this project, smash on the like button and leave a comment below. 1 like equals to 1 prayer for the YouTube algorithm to push this content to more people just like you who are going to find it helpful, and basically just consider it as a little way of you supporting this channel. And lastly, if you've not subscribed, ensure you do that. So first of all, you don't miss the second part that's going to contain the backend, the complete build, and also you don't miss the next project we're going to build together on this channel. Let's dive into it. Now, for the technologies we are going to use, first of all, we're going to make use of React, which is a front-end library for building user interfaces. Now, we're not going to be making use of React on its own out of the box. We are going to make use of Next.js. Now, Next.js is the React framework for the web. Now, Next.js is used by some of the world's largest companies. Next.js enables you to create high-quality web application with the power of React components, okay? And we're going to create a modern, clean, and responsive UI using Tailwind CSS. So we're going to be styling using Tailwind CSS, and we're going to make use of version 4 and above. And lastly, for our backend, we're going to make use of Supabase. But for this first part, we are strictly going to work on the front end and all the front end logic, okay? So we're not going to be doing any Supabase in this part of the project. So first, we have to actually create a new Next.js application. So I'm going to head over to nextjs.org. Right here, we're going to click on Get Started. It's going to bring us right here. I'll click on Installation, and you can see right here the installation guide, system requirement. Before you begin, make sure your system meets the following requirements. Now, you have to actually have Node.js installed in your machine for this command that we are going to run to actually work on your machine. You have to have Node.js installed, and the Node.js version has to be 18.18 and above. And also, your machine has to be operating a macOS, Windows, or Linux operating system. So you just have to copy this command right here, nps create next app at latest. So I want to copy this. I head back to my Visual Studio because I want to open up my terminal. Inside my terminal, just paste that command right here. Now I'm going to add a /. I'm basically telling this command to create this application inside this music streaming website. I don't want to create a new folder inside. I want to create our application inside this music streaming folder. So /, and click on enter. And this is going to ask us if we want to make use of TypeScript. Yes, we want to make use of TypeScript. Do we want to use ESLint? Yes, we want to use ESLint. Do we want to use Tailwind CSS? Yes, we want to use Tailwind CSS. And yes to SRC folder. Yes to app folder. Turbo pack, yes. And would you like to customize the import aliens? No to that. And it's going to start actually installing all our dependencies. The installation process is going to take some time depending on the strength of your network, but when it's done installing, you're going to see those files right here, okay? And we have this node module that's going to house all the packages we're going to work with. And to actually check the packages we have installed, we're going to go to package.json. Now inside this package.json, whenever we install a new package, it's going to be inside this our dependency object right here. And right here you can see we already have 3 dependencies right here. We have React installed because we're obviously working with React. We have React DOM and we have Nest version 50.4.3 installed. Okay, so I'm going to close up this file. And for the other files we have this public folder right here. And this public folder, this is where we're going to add all our assets, our images, our audio. This is where we're going to actually add those items. Okay, and also we have this SRC folder right here. And this SRC folder is going to actually contain all the files and components, all the pages and components for our application. like our login page, our sign up page. This is where we are going to create all those files, and also our components. Now this globals.css file, this is basically where we're going to have all our CSS. Now since we are making use of Tailwind CSS, this is basically all we need, okay? And also inside this layers.css file, now this layers.css file, we are actually going to learn more about this later on in the video. I'm going to teach you how to actually create your own layout in Next.js. And also we have this page.css file right here, and this page.css file right here is currently acting as our home page. So to run this application, just type npm run dev. I'll click on enter. Now that command is going to start up a local server for us at http localhost port 3000. So I'm just going to follow this link. I just follow this link. Now this is going to actually open up our project in the browser. And you can see we have Next.js right here. Okay, so now we have to actually get rid of the files we are not going to use. So first of all, I'll just get rid of all the files in this page.css file. I'll get rid of everything. Yeah, I'll get rid of this div, and I just add a h1 tag that's simply going to say hello everybody. Then also I'll get rid of this next image because we're not making use of this for now. So next we're going to get rid of the things we don't need in this globals.css file. Remember I said that for now we only need this import Tailwind CSS line of code, okay? So I just get rid of all the other styles. I'll get rid of all this. I'll save that. Then I'll go to my layers.css file. Are there files we don't need here? I don't think there are any files we don't need here. Now we have to do is just change the title and description. So when we go back to our project, we go back to the web page, you can see we have this title right here, create next app. Now this is where we're actually going to change it inside the layout file. So instead of create next app, I'll say music streaming websites. Now just copy this. For the description, I'll paste this right here. It's going to be music streaming website by Egbon Thick. I'll save that. I won't head back to the web page. You can see right now that we have that title right here, music streaming website, and all these styles we don't need are actually gone. We have that hello everybody text right here. Cool. Now before we start working on our application, first of all, we have to actually set up the colors we are going to use for our Tailwind application, the custom colors we are going to be using. So I'm going to go to my globals.css file. Go to my globals.css file. In previous versions of Tailwind CSS, when we wanted to actually set custom colors, you have to make use of the Tailwind config file. Now from version 4 and above of Tailwind CSS, we do that inside our globals.css file. Now to actually set custom colors in Tailwind version 4, to do that we'll say at theme. Then in between this opening and closing squiggly bracket, we're going to paste in the colors we are going to use. So I'll just paste in these colors right here, okay? And these are the variable colors we are going to use for this application. I just close up this globals.css file. Now we can actually start working on our application. So I'll close up this left sidebar. And inside this return statement, I'm going to create a div. This div, we're going to give this div a class of minimum h screen. And this is basically a minimum height of 100 VH in CSS. And inside this div, we're going to create a nav tag for our navbar. This nav tag is going to have a class of h15, a display of flex, justify of between, items, we'll give it center, padding horizontal of 6, position, we're going to give it fixed, a top of 0, left of 0, width of full, and this width of full is basically a width of 100%. We'll give it a BG of black and a Z index of, let me just use 100. Okay, now you're going to notice the way we actually applied our color. You can see that we said BG black and the black gets applied. Now we'll go back to our globals.css file. Go back to the globals.css file. You're going to notice that we have this theme right here, color black, color primary. When we are making use of these custom colors, we don't have to call this color property. All we have to call the colors after this hyphen, okay? This is what we actually need to call these colors after the hyphen. So I'll go back to my project. Now I'll just wrap this up. Now you're also going to notice that when I take cursor off this class, you're going to notice that the class name is actually going to fold. That's because I'm making use of a VS Code extension called Tailwind Fold. And this actually helps you to fold your Tailwind when you are not focused on the Tailwind CSS class, which actually helps keep your code neat and organized. So I'll just close this back up. When I head back to the browser, I can see that navbar was just added, right? That black navbar was just added. Now, when we look at our final project, you're going to see what we are trying to build is that we are going to have two containers in this inside this nav tab. We're going to have the container that's going to be at the left hand side. It's going to contain this logo, this home icon, and this input right here. And then we're going to have another container on the right hand side. It's going to contain this items right here and this login button. Okay, so first of all, let's actually add these items on the left hand side. So to do that, I'm going to create a div. I'll give this div a class of flex, a gap of 6, and items of center. After that, I'm going to add an image. So to do that in Next.js, we make use of the image tag. I'll say image, and I'll just import image from next image. And this image tag is going to take an src. And this src is going to point to an image inside our images folder. Okay, I want to go to our public folder. We have an images folder, and here inside these images lies all the images we are going to make use of in building the UI of this application. And right now we are pointing to this logo.png file. Okay, that's our actual logo. So I just close this up. Now, if you actually want these images are going to be available in the description below. I'm going to leave a link in the description below. It's going to take you to a zip file that contains all these images in my Google Drive. So inside this src folder, I want to say go into the images folder, then point to logo.png. Then we have to pass in a auth property. I just call this logo image. And that's not actually all in Next.js. Now when I save this and head to the browser, I can notice that we have an error. Image with src images logo.png is missing required width property. Now when you are working with these images components in Next.js, you have to actually specify the width and height of this image, okay, so that Next.js understand better the aspect ratio of the images. So for this one, we just give it a width of 500 and height of at least 500. I'll save that. Now when we return back to the web, you can see we have that logo right here. Okay, we have that logo right here. Now we have to actually style this logo, so I'm going to add some styles to it. Now inside this logo, I'm going to create a class name. I'll just format this. I'll simply just give this a width of 9 and height of 9. I'll save that. And when we return back to the web, you can see that that logo is actually styled and it's positioned at the left hand corner of this nav bar. So after this image, we're going to actually add that home icon. So to do that, I'll just create a link. Now this link, we're going to import this link from Next.js link, from Next link. And we have to pass in a href property. Now this link, whenever this link is clicked on, I want to just go to the home page, / and inside this link, we're going to call the icon, and we've not installed React icon, so let's actually do that. So I'm going to open up this terminal again. Now I don't want to stop my server, so I just click on create a new terminal. Then I'll say npm install React icons. Click on enter. Now that command is actually going to install React icons to our application. Now to actually check that library, what we are going to do, we're going to go to our package.json. When I open this up, we're going to notice that we have React icons version 5.5 installed to our application. So I'll just close this back up, close up our terminal. This icon is going to be md home field. So we're going to add some styles to this link. So I'll give it a class name of bg background. And this bg background I'm making use of is coming from one of our custom colors right here. Okay, background. Remember I said that we don't have to call this color, we just call from this hyphen background. Okay, so I'm making use of this color. I give it a width of 11, height of 11, a display of grid, a place items center to ensure that the icon is actually at the center of this link, text of white, text of 3XL. I'll give it a rounded of full. I'll save that. Now when we head back to the web page, you can see we have this icon right here looking really styled. So next we are going to actually create this input. So let's work on that. So I'll go back to my Visual Studio Code. Now after this link, I'm going to create another div. Inside this, we're going to have an icon that's going to be go search. I just try to import that in go search Then after that icon, we're going to have an input. And this input is going to have a placeholder that's going to say, what do you want to play? So I'll style them up. So I'm going to give this a class name of BG background. I'm basically giving the background of this input content, the content that wraps around this icon and this input, a background of BG background. I'll give them a display of flex items. I'll give it center, a height of 11, a width of 90, padding horizontal of 3, and I want to add a gap of 3 between the icon and the input. I'll give them a text color of test primary test. Now this is actually one of our custom colors. Test primary test is basically primary test, and a rounded or full. Okay, I'll save that. I'll just save that and check out the output. Yeah, it's actually looking better. Okay, you can see that input container around the input and the icon. Okay, and the gap between them. So there's going to add some Tailwind classes to the icon and the input to make them look better. So go back to our project. We're going to create a class name for this icon. Create a class name. I'll give this a text of primary text and a shrink of 0. Now I'm going to explain why I'm giving this a shrink of 0. Okay, so first of all, let's quickly add styles to this input. I'll give this a class name of height full, which is height of 100%, width of full, which is a width of 100%, outline, we'll give it none, outline of none. Then to style the placeholder, I'll say placeholder test primary test. I give the placeholder a test primary test. Okay, now when I save that, you're going to notice that our input and our icon are actually looking better. We can type on this input, you can see how good this is actually looking. Now back to the reason why I gave this icon a flex shrink of 0. Now when we added a width of full, this width of full property to this input, now what that is going to do is going to ensure that the input is going to stretch and occupy 100% of its content, occupy as much space as can get. And the problem that will cause is that when the screen size starts to reduce, it's going to start to actually shrink this icon. Okay, so we don't actually want that. So that's why I gave this icon a flex shrink of 0. So no matter how much the input grows, it's not going to actually shrink this icon. Alright, cool. So next we're going to work on the items that's going to be at the right hand side of the navbar. Okay, so we're going to go back to our Visual Studio Code. After this first div at the left hand side, I'll just wipe this off. We'll create another div. Inside this div, we're going to have 2 divs, one for this text right here, one for this text right here, these items right here, and one for this logout button. So create 2 divs. Inside that div, I'll create another div. We'll give this div a Tailwind class of flex items of center. Then I want a gap between the items, so a gap of 8. Now I'll give this first div a Tailwind class of flex, a gap of 2, a text color of test secondary test, a font of bold, a border white of 2, and a border color. We're going to give it a border of color test primary test. And finally, we'll give it a padding right of 6. After that, we'll create an anchor tag in here. Now we're not going to make use of this anchor tag, so I'll just use hash here. And inside this anchor tag, we're going to have a text. The text is simply going to be premium. And for the Tailwind class, we're going to add a hover effect on hover. We'll give it a text primary test. Now copy that link. I'll paste that underneath here. Paste it down underneath here again. And the second one is going to be support. The last one is going to be download. I'll save that. And we'll head back to the web page. You can see we have those items. Just add a premium support download and that border at the right hand side, the border right of 2. So let's add the login button. So after this div, remember we have another div. Okay, so we're going to create the link in here, the login link. So we're going to make use of the Next.js link components. I'm going to pass in a href property. And for now, we don't have a login page. We're going to create that later on, but we're going to have a login page. So the href is going to point to the login page. And the text title is simply going to be login. So let's add some Tailwind classes to make the link less ugly. We'll give it a height of 11. We'll give it a background of white, which is BG white. A text gray, as the text color, text gray of 950. 100. I'm going to give it full. And this 100 of full is basically a border radius of 50%. A font of bold. Then on hover, I want to give it a BG secondary text. I'll save that. I'll check out the output. And you can see we have that login button right here, and it's looking weird. So what I'm going to do, remember that anchor tags by default have a display of inline. That's why this is actually looking very weird. So let me just quickly add a padding and also add a display of grids to this. So I'll give this a display. I'll give it grid. And I'll give it a padding horizontal of 6. Let me just make use of it. I'll save that. And when we head back to the web page, you can see that the button is actually looking better now, but the button is not in the middle. Since you give it a display of grid, we can do a place items. I want to place the item at the center. I'll save that. That's going to position this text in the center of this button. Cool. Now that we've actually gotten the navbar, now we have to ensure this is actually responsive. I will go to small screen device. I just drag this up and I just drag this to the corner. Now we'll go to small screen device. You're going to notice that it's actually unresponsive, not responsive at all. So what I want to do is that for small screen device, I want to just get rid of this search inputs. Then I want to get rid of these other items. Okay, I only want the login button and these other ones to remain for small screen devices. So let's do that. Now, first of all, we're going to start with this search input. So I'll just open this up. Where is that search input container right here? So first of all, we want this to have a display of none. So give it hidden. And this hidden is basically giving it a display of none. This hidden in Tailwind CSS utility class simply means display of none. And when we save that, you're going to notice that we cannot actually see this input, okay? But for last screen device, we want to be able to see this input. So what we are going to do, we're going to say for last screen device, just open up this Tailwind class. I'm going to say for last screen device LG, I want this to have a display of flex, okay? Now when we hover on this, class, you're going to notice that for screens that are greater than 1024 pixels, this is going to have a display of flex. But for smaller screens, it's going to have a display of hidden. I'll save that. And we'll head back to the web. You're going to see that we can actually see this for last screen, but when we go to small screen device, we cannot actually see it. I just reduce, we cannot actually see the input. So let's do the same for these items right here. I'll just scroll down. Remember, we gave these items, I think we gave these items a display of flex. So I want this to have a display of flex for last screen device, then for small screen device, a display of hidden. I'll save that. I want to go back to the web page. When we use the screen size, we're going to notice that this is not fully responsive. And that's how easy it is to make a web page responsive using Tailwind CSS. We're actually not done with the navbar yet. Now we have to actually convert this navbar to a React reusable component. Now in React, everything we build, you have to actually break them into components. Like this navbar is going to be its own component. So I'm going to teach you how to actually create reusable components. So to do that, we'll go back to our Visual Studio Code. I'll close this up. Inside this SRC folder, I'll create a new folder. I'll call this folder components. And inside this folder, we're going to create our first component. I'll call this component navbar.tsx. Now a component in React is basically a function that's going to return a JSS. So let's actually create our first component. So I'll say down here, I'll say function. And the name of this function is simply going to be the name of the component. I want to call this navbar. And this navbar is going to return. It's going to return. What is it going to return? It's going to return our navbar. So I'm just going to cut our navbar off from here. I'll cut this off. Then I'll just paste that in here. Okay. then we have to actually import all these icons and all these things we actually imported for this components to work. So I'm going to go back to the page.tss file. Just everything we imported for this page, I just cut them off from here. We don't need them here, and we'll paste that up here. And you'll notice that those errors are actually gone. I just format the document. But now we have this function right now, but the function is really not doing anything. When we hover on this, you're going to notice that it's going to say navbar is declared, but its value is never read. That's because we've created this function and we basically created a component, but the component is not actually being used. The reason is that before you can actually make use of a component, you actually first of all have to export that component. So we're going to scroll down. After actually creating a function, down here, you're going to say export default navbar. Okay, now with this line of code, we'll be able to reuse this navbar anywhere in our application because we're actually exporting this navbar from this file. Okay, now we'll go back to the web page. You'll notice that we no longer have our navbar yet, but we actually gotten rid of the code in that page.tss file. Now to actually use this component, we're going to go to our page.tss file. Now just on the inside this div, we just call the component, call this component navbar. Then just import that in. Okay, now you can actually import this man and you can say import navbar from at components navbar. But if you have the right plugin installed, all you just have to do is click on backspace, then it's going to actually import. Just click on the navbar component, it's going to auto import for you. And you can see right now it goes into the components folder, into the navbar file, then actually imports this navbar in. And when I save that and head back to the web page, you can see we have that navbar component right here. And that's the fun thing about React. We create components and we're able to reuse those components anywhere in our application. Cool. Now, so I'm going to go back to my navbar. Now, I can actually export this in a different way. I'll just get rid of this. I'll save that. Now, up here, I can say instead of just coming down here to write another line of code, up here I can say I want to export default function navbar. It's still going to work. When we go back to the web page, you can still see our navbar component right here. Alright, cool. Now that we are done with the navbar, I can start working on other items like this sidebar, this main content right here. Okay, so but before we can do that, I'm gonna add a background of black to this web page. Now I didn't want to add the background initially because I wanted us to be able to see the height of the navbar when we're actually creating the navbar. So I'm going to go to do that, I'll just go to my layouts.css file. Inside this body tag, I'm going to add a style to this body. So in here, inside this class, then we are applying this font that we're getting from Next.js. Inside this, I'll just add a style here. I'll give this a BG of black, which is one of our custom colors. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, you're going to notice that we now have a black background. Cool. So next, we're going to start creating the main contents. Okay, so for my main content, I'll create a main. Inside this main is where we're going to have our sidebar and our main content. Okay, so I'm going to create a component for our sidebar. So I'll go to my components folder. I'll create a new file. I'll call this file sidebar.csx rfc. And this rfc is a shortcut to actually create these snippets. Okay, now you already understood what we did. Export default function sidebar. We're just going to return the gss right here. Okay, as usual, you can get rid of this. I'll save that. Now just import the sidebar into this component. I'll say sidebar, and that's going to import the sidebar component into this page.tss file. Okay, I'll just format the document. Now inside the sidebar, we're going to have a div. I want to check out our sidebar. You're going to notice that for large screen device, we have the sidebar right here. Then for small screen device, we're going to have this. I just reduce the screen size. For small screen device, we're going to have this little icon right here that we can use to actually toggle the sidebar. Okay, so we have to create a div that's going to contain the aside, that is the sidebar, and this button right here. Okay, so create a div, which we just did. And inside this div, we're going to create an aside. After that, we're going to create a button. Okay, we're going to work on this button later on, but first of all, let's work on this aside. And this aside is going to have a Tailwind class of fixed, a left of 2, a top of 15, a background of BG background, which is one of our custom colors, a width of 75, rounded of LG, a height of 90 VH, a padding of 2, and overflow wire of auto. Okay, and the reason I'm giving this an overflow wire of auto is that when we have items that actually overflows this height of 90 VH, you want to be able to scroll through this sidebar. Okay, that's why I'm giving it an overflow wire of auto. And inside this asset, I want to create a div. I'll give this a Tailwind class of flex, justify between. Inside this asset, I'm going to create a div. Now this div I'm adding right now is going to be the div that's going to wrap around this your library text and this plus icon. You're going to click on to actually add new songs. Okay, so I'll give this div a Tailwind class of flex, a justify of between, one space between the items inside this container, a text of text primary text, items of center, a padding of 2, and a margin bottom of 4. Then inside we're going to add the items. First of all, we're going to add h2 tag. They're simply going to say your library. We'll give it a class of font bold. Then after that, we're going to create a link. I'll just import that from Next link. For the href, it's going to go to the upload song page. I'm going to create this page later on in this video. Then the title is going to be an icon of loop plus. I'll just import that in loop plus icon. I'll save that. I'll return back to the web page and we can see those items right here. I don't want a plug icon. I might get a plug icon. Like I said, loop plug, not loop plug, loop plus. Import that loop plus in loop plus, not loop plug. Get rid of this one. I don't want a plug, I want a plus. Yeah, you can see that plus icon right here. Okay, when we click on this, it's going to take us to the upload song page where we can actually upload song. The icon is actually too small. Just increase the size. I'll give the icon a size of 20. I'll save that. Yeah, it's actually way better. Cool. Next, we're going to create these items right here. Okay, so let's start working on that. And we're going to have this button right here. When we hover on this, it's going to actually display this button. And I'm going to teach you how to actually do this in Tailwind. So I'll go back to the project. After this div, I'll create another div. And this is the div that's going to wrap around all the items. I'm going to create the first item. I'll give this a Tailwind utility class of flex, a cap of 2, items of center, cursor of pointer, margin bottom of 4, a padding of 2, a rounded of LG, and a hover. When someone hovers on it, I want to give it a BG, the background color BG of hover. Okay, inside this, I want to create an image tag. So I'll just import this from Next image. This image is going to have an src that's going to point to our images folder /images folder. Now we're actually adding images in Next.js. It's very important you put this slash. Don't do it something like this, then after the images, then add a slash. You have to add this slash as your images are not going to be loaded into your web page, into your application. Okay, you're going to be slash cover 1.jp, sorry, not hp, jpeg, jpeg. I'm going to add an alt text. It's going to be cover image. And for the width and height, I'll give it a width of 300, a height of 300. Yes, I'll just add some Tailwind utility classes. I'll give it a width of 10, a height of 10. Objects, we're going to use cover. And lastly, rounded of MD. Okay, cool. I'll save that. Let's actually check out what we are doing. You can see that image right here. Also, when we hover on this, you can see that hover effect we added. Okay, cool. So let's add those two text. So after this image, I'm going to create a div that's going to wrap around those 2 paragraph tags. The first paragraph tag is going to say midnight echoes. Then the second paragraph tag It's going to say by neon skyline. I give the first paragraph tag a Tailwind class of text primary text and a font of semi-bold. Then for the second paragraph tag, I'll give it a Tailwind class of text secondary text and a text of SM. Basically a font size, a smaller font size of 14 pixels. I'll save that. I can see those items right here. Cool. Now let's just create more of these. Let's create about 5. I'll wrap this div up. Now just drag this down 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll save that. Then you can see we actually have 5 of these items right here. Cool. Now you can actually change the details of this one if you want, because my focus is actually to teach you how to actually build the UI. Okay. Now if you want to actually change them, there are the images folder. You're gonna see other image. I think cover 2, cover 3, cover 4. Okay, you can actually update it and just put in some random names and random musician who actually sang the song. Okay, now that we're done creating this sidebar, we have to actually ensure that this sidebar is actually responsive. Now when I take this to small screen device, I'll just take this to small screen. You're gonna notice that the sidebar is not responsive because when we have content in this left hand side, the contents are going to be squished. Okay, the sidebar is going to squish this content, so we have to ensure that for small screen device we cannot see this sidebar. This sidebar is going to be inside the left hand side. Then we'll click on an icon, it's going to slide out. Then we'll click on it, it's going to slide in. Okay, so I'm going to teach you how to do that with Tailwind CSS and React states. So the first step we're going to take is we're going to create that button that's going to position around here, around this place where this next icon is. We're going to get rid of this next icon, don't have to worry. So I'm going to create a button. And we already created this button in. Remember I said that this div that wraps around the button and this aside, this button is going to act as the toggle button. Okay, so let's actually style this up. First of all, I'm going to add an icon in here. The name of the icon is going to be MD outline library music. I'll give the button a Tailwind utility class of fixed, bottom of 5, left of 5, BG black, a width of 12, a height of 12, a display of grid. Place items at the center. Place items center. Give it a text of white, a rounded of full, a Z of 50, and a cursor of pointer. I'll save that. Head back to the web page, and we have that. We're supposed to have that button right here. We'll get rid of this. Hide. And we don't have that button. Why do we not have that button? Let me check the Z index of this sidebar. Doesn't have a Z index, but we still cannot see that button. Why? And that's because we didn't spell this bottom correctly. Bottom of 5. Save that. And we can see that icon right here. Cool. But we don't want this icon to be visible for large screen device. We only want this to be visible for small screen devices. Okay, when the screen size reduces. So how do we actually ensure this is only visible for large screen device? What we are going to do, we're going to give this for large screen device, we'll give it a display of none. Okay, now when I hover on this, you're going to notice that for screens that are greater than 1024 pixels, this button is going to have a display of none. As LG hidden. And when I go back to the web page, you can see that we can no longer see that button right there. But when I go to small screen device, you can see that we can have that button right here. And I won't expand. We're not going to see that button there. Cool. Now next, we actually have to ensure that for small screen device, this sidebar is inside the left hand side. Okay, so let's do that. In Tailwind CSS, to actually do that, just scroll up to my sidebar. Scroll up my sidebar, open this up. To do that in Tailwind CSS, we're going to give it a negative translate x of full. I'll save that. When I head back to the web, you're going to notice that this sidebar. You can actually see part of the sidebar right here. It's inside the left hand side. Okay, and I just noticed that we didn't add a background to our button, so let's do that. I'll just scroll down. I'll give this button a background. Sorry, I'll give it a background, not BG black, that's right, BG background. I'll save that. Yeah, that's way better. That's how I want it to look. Now, when we click on this, we want to be able to slide this out. Okay, so to do that in React, we're going to create a state. Okay, so up here in my sidebar, I'm going to create a state. Up here, I'll create a state. I'll say const sidebar open. Then the setter function is going to be set sidebar open. It's going to equals to use states. Now the use state hook is the hook we actually use to manage state in a React component. Now this sidebar open is the variable that's going to be equals to the value in here. By default, the value is going to be false. While this set sidebar open is the function we are going to call whenever I want to actually update the state inside this component. Okay, and when I save this, you're going to notice that immediately we're going to get an error. Okay, and the reason we are getting this error is because we are making use of Next.js. Now in Next.js, every component by default is a server component, which means you cannot make use of state or any client functionality inside that component. So you have to actually tell Next.js that you actually want to write state component, like use state hook, you have to make this state in that component. So you have to tell Next.js to make it a client component. To do that in Next.js, we just go up here, then we're going to say pass in a command called use client. I'll save that. And that's going to tell Next.js that I want to actually manage state inside this component. You're going to say that error is gone. That's going to tell Next.js that we actually want to make this a client component. Cool. Now next, we want to conditionally add the styles to this sidebar right here. Okay, when the state is set to true, we want to give it a translate x of 0. We want it to be open when it's set to true, but when it's set to false, we want it to be closed. We want to have a translate x of a negative translate x of full. Cool. So let's do that. To do that, I'll just cut everything up from here. Then I want to put these styles inside the backticks. I'll paste that right here. Then to add dynamic styles in Tailwind CSS, we just use this $. Then in between this opening and closing squiggle bracket, we're going to actually add our dynamic styles. Now the condition we want to check if sidebar is open. Okay, if sidebar is open, we want to give it a class of translate x of 0. Okay, but if the sidebar is not open, we want to give it this right here, this negative translate x of full. Now paste that right here. Now what this is going to do is it's going to check if this is true, it's going to use this class. Now if this is false, it's going to make use of this class right here. Cool. I'll save that. And when I go back to the web page, now based on the fact that this state is false, we are not going to see our sidebar. Now when I set this to true, I set this to true, I head back, you're going to notice that we have our sidebar open. But obviously we don't want to come to our code all the time to actually change this to true or change this to false. Okay, so what we are going to do, we're going to hook up an onClick event to this button right here. So we're going to add an onClick event to this. So I'm going to say onClick. And when someone clicks on this button, what I simply just want to do, I want to set, I want to call the setter function. I want to update the state to is not open, is sidebar open. Okay, and what this line of code is going to do is that whenever we click on this button, okay, it's going to check if the sidebar is open. If the sidebar is open, if it's set to true, it's going to, this function is going to set it to false. If it's set to false, when we click on it, it's going to set it to true. It's basically going to set it to the opposite value. Okay, that says sidebar to is not sidebar open. Cool. Now this is basically just going to toggle it between true and false. I want to head back to our web page. I'll head back. When I click on this, it's going to open it up. When I click on it again, it's going to close it back up. Now we have to add a transition to make it more smooth. So I'll just go to my asset. I want to add a transition with Tailwind CSS. I'll add a transition. Sorry, transition of transform. And I want a duration of 500 milliseconds. Save that, head back to the web page, and I click on this. You can see it slides out, it slides back in. Cool. But we have a major problem now. When we go to last screen device, when we toggle the class to false, it's going to close it even for last screen device. We don't want that. For last screen device, we want this sidebar to always be open. Okay. So what we are going to do is that we're going to go back to that Tailwind class. We're going to say for last screen device, I want this to always have a translate x of 0. I'll save that. And when I return back, you notice that for last screen device, we're always going to have this open. Okay. Then for small screen device, we'll be able to open and close the sidebar. Cool. So next we're going to start creating these items and this main section right here. Okay, now it's going to have the list of new songs, basically all the songs in this web application. Go back to my page.css. So after this sidebar, I'm going to create a div, and it is going to be its own component. So I'll just create a component for this. I'll call this component, what should I call this component? I'll call this component all songs.csx. Okay, RFC. Then I'll get rid of this. I'll head back to my page.css file, save this first. Head back to my page.css, so I'll just call that component, get rid of this div tag. I'll just call that component all songs. And you see I clean this page.css file is. Now we have lots of code in this page.css. So we have code for the navbar, for the sidebar, and now we're going to create code for the all songs, but we cannot see those code here. All we just do is just create a component, write those code, and we just import that component right here. Okay, and that's actually the power of React. I'll save this. Then inside my all songs, I'm going to create a div tag. This div tag, I'm going to give it a Tailwind class of minimum height of I use 90 VH, minimum height of 90 VH, a background of BG background, margin vertical of 15, and a padding of 4. I'll save that. When I return back to the web page, you can see that we have that container right here. Okay, I can actually scroll through it. But you see the problem we're having right now. Now this sidebar is actually overlapping this container. Okay, we don't want that. We want the container to start from around here. To do that, we're going to give this container, give it a margin left. Give it a margin left of 80. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, you can see that we now have the margin at the left hand side. The container is actually going to start around this area. Cool. Now I'll give this a rounded of LG and also an MX of 4. I'll save that. Now I'll return back to the web because that MX4 add is going to add a margin at the right hand side right here. Okay, that's basically MX of 4 is basically a margin left of 1 and a margin right of 4. Cool. But we have a problem. When we go to small screen device, you're going to notice that margin left of 80 is still being applied. We don't want that to be applied for small screen device. Okay, we want this main content to occupy up to this area, up to here for small screen device. So what we are going to do, we're going to say we want this margin left of 80 to be applied for only screens LG, for all these screens that are 1024 pixels and above. Okay, so we just add an LG. So when I save that and return back to the web, you're going to notice that it's not going to be applied for small screen device, only going to be applied for large screen devices. So next, inside this div, I'm going to create a h2 tag, and this h2 tag is simply going to say new songs. Now add some Tailwind utility classes to it. I give it a class of text 2XL, a text of white, and a margin bottom of 3. I'll save that. When I return back to the web page, you can see that text right here, new songs. I'll just increase the font weight. I'll give it a font of semi-bold. That's way better. And also I just noticed that this icon, I didn't actually increase the size of this icon for our navbar. Let me just go back there. Where is that icon? I'll give this, I think it's this search icon. I'll give this search icon a size of 20. I'll save that. Yeah, that's way better. But I increase it a little bit more. Give it 25. That's too much. 22. Yeah, better this way. So next we're going to create this grid right here. Okay, I'm going to have this music card right here. This is going to be a grid display. Okay, so let's actually create this. So I'm going to head back to my Visual Studio Code. I'm going to go to my all songs. After this h2 tag, I'm going to create a div. This div, we're going to give it a Tailwind class of grid. I'll give each of the items inside the grid a gap of 2. For small screen devices, we want to have 2 columns. So I'll do the grid calls of 2. For medium screens and above, we want to have a grid calls of 3. For large screens, we want to have a grid calls of 4. And for extra large screens, we want to have a grid calls of 5. Now what I'm doing right here is that for small screens, right now, it's going to have a grid template columns of repeat 2 min-max 01 fr. Okay, for screens that are 768 pixels and above, it's going to have 3 columns. For screens that are above 1024 pixels, it's going to have 4 columns. And for screens that are 1280 pixels and above, it's going to have 5 columns. Inside this div, I'm going to create our first item. I'll create a div for that. This is going to have a Tailwind utility class of bg background. I give it a padding of 3, a cursor of pointer, rounded of MD. Then on hover, I'm going to give it a background color of bg hover. Hover. And this bg hover is one of our variable colors we created in our globals.css. Okay. And inside this div, we're going to have an image. So I'll call the next image component. Just import that in from next image. Then the src is going to point to our images folder. It's going to point to cover 1.jpg. Then the alt text is going to be cover image. So I'll give it a width property. So Next.js doesn't scream at us, of 500, a height of 500, and I'm going to add a Tailwind class. Now, since we already placed this in a grid display, we just have to tell the image to occupy 100% width. So I give it a width of full, which is basically 100% width, a height of 50, object of cover, and lastly, rounded of MD. I'll save that. I'll check out the output. And we can see that image right here. Okay, we can hover on this container. We can see that hover effect. So next, I'm going to add the text for the song title and that of the artist. So after this image, I'm going to create a paragraph tag. This first one is going to be Rain on Marble Street. I'll add another paragraph tag. This one is going to be By the Lanterns. Let's just wrap this inside a div container. Wrap this up inside a div. I'll give this div a margin top of 2 to add a margin between these items and this image above it. Okay, now I'll paste the paragraph tags in here. Just format the document. So let's quickly add some Tailwind classes to this paragraph tag. I'll give this a text primary text and a font of semi-bold. And for this one, I'm going to give it a class name of text secondary text and a text of SM. I'll save that. Check out the output and you can see that this is actually looking really good. Now let's actually create more of these cards. So I'll just go back to my Visual Studio Code. I'll wrap up this div as the div item, not the div container. Remember, we gave these divs that wraps around these items a grid display. So I'm going to just copy this item created, one of these items, and drag that down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll save that. I'm going to head back to the web page. You can see we have actually 6 of these cards right now. And let's check if this is responsive. When we reduce the screen size, you're going to notice that the cards are going to be fully responsive. You can see right now the cards are actually fully responsive, even the left sidebar. So now the cards are responsive because of these styles we applied up here. These styles we applied when we gave this a grid gap 2, grid cause of 2 for small screen device, grid cause of 2, grid cause of 3. Now this actually was ensuring that those cards are actually responsive. Now I'm not going to be updating the details because I'm focused on creating the user interface. I'm just going to give you that as an assignment, okay? So next we're going to start creating a login page. So I'll just log this out. I'll click on login. Now I'm going to go back to my Visual Studio Code. I'll create another page. Now to create a new page in Next.js, we'll go to our app folder. Now inside this app folder, I'm going to create a folder. I'll create a folder. I'll call this folder login. Then inside this folder, I'm going to create a page. Page.tsx. Now inside this page, we're going to create a React component. And this is very important when you're working with Next.js page. Now, right now, when we created this with React snippet, I'll get rid of this. When we created this with React snippet, you're going to notice that the name of the page has to be a lowercase page, which means when we use RFC to create this snippet, the p tag is going to be lowercase too. But this is actually wrong in React. Every component has to be a capital case. Okay, so instead of lowercase, we're going to make use of uppercase. I'll save that. Now when I go back to our project, I'll go back to our actual project. When I click on login, it's going to take some time because the page has to compile. Now you're going to see that we are now at the login page. Okay, remember we gave the body a background of black. That's why the entire web page is actually black. Cool. So let's start trying creating this login page. Now inside this login page, I'm going to create a div. I'll give this div a Tailwind class of screen. I give it a display of flex, a justify of center, items of center, a width of full, and lastly, I'm going to give this a background color of hover. Okay, now I'm giving this a background of hover because I want the login page to have the same color we use for our hover. This color right here, I'll go to our globals of CSS. This color we were using for our hover effect. I want the login page to have this color as its background. Okay, then inside this div, I'm going to create another div. We'll give this div a class of bg background, a display of flex, items. I'm going to give it center, padding horizontal of 6 for small screen. Then for large screen, I want to give it a padding horizontal of 12, padding vertical of 6, a rounded of full, MD. I'll give it a maximum width of 400 pixels and a width of 90%. Okay, now what I'm doing right here is I'm giving this login card container a maximum width of 400 pixels, which means for screen size that are greater than 400 pixels, it's going to have a width of 400 pixels. But if the screen size like mobile phones are less than 400 pixels, it's going to have a width of 90%. Okay, and inside this, I'm going to add an image. So I'll call in the image component from Next.js, next image, and this image is going to have an src that's going to go into our images folder. It's going to go to logo.png, and the alt text is going to be logo. I have to give it a width and height, so Next.js doesn't scream out. So I'll give it a width of 500, a height I'll do 500. And I'll add some Tailwind classes to it, a height of 11, a width of 11. I'll save that. Let's actually check out the output. You can see that the item right here, the logo right here. You can see that box we just created. Cool. So after this image, we're going to add a h2 tag. This h2 tag is simply going to say log in to Spotify. I give this a text of 2XL, a font of bold, a text of white, margin vertical of 2, margin bottom of 8, and a text of center. I'll save that. And now return back to the web page. You can see we have those two items right here, but the background is still black. I just noticed the background is still black. Why is the background still black? We gave this one a BG background. We gave this one a BG hover. Oh, we are saying BG on hover. No, it's supposed to be BG hover. We're supposed to use a hyphen right there. I'll save that. Yeah, this is how I want it to look. Okay, I want these cards, this login box to be dark and the background to actually be lighter. And the reason these things are arranged side by side, like remember we gave the div that wraps around this h2 tag and this image, we gave it a display of flex. So we just give it a flex direction of column. So I'll do a flex of col. That is going to ensure that the items are going to be arranged vertically down. So next we're going to create this form right here. Okay, so after this h2 tag, I'm going to create a form and get rid of this action. We're not going to be making use of this in this project. Inside this form, I'm going to create an input. And this input is going to be of type text and it's going to have a placeholder of your email. I have some Tailwind classes to it. First of all, I'm going to give it an outline of none, a border of 1, a border color of border neutral 600, a padding of 2, a width of full, a rounded of MD, and give it a text of primary text. I give the placeholder a color, a placeholder of neutral 600. Margin bottom, I'm going to give it 6. And finally, when someone focus on it, I want to give it on focus, I want to give it a color of text secondary text. After that, I just copy this and I'll drag that down. This second input is going to be your password. I think that's it. I'll save that. I'll check out the output and we can see those two inputs right here, your password and your email. Cool. So let's create that button. After these two inputs, I want to create a button. I'm simply going to say continue. I have some Tailwind classes to this. I'll give this a background of BG primary, a padding vertical of 3, rounded of full, a width of full, font of bold, and a cursor of pointer. I'll save that. Head back to the web page and you can see that button right here. Okay. Next, I'm going to add this text right here. Don't have an account and sign up now. Let's do that. So I'll go back to my Visual Studio Code. After this button, I'm going to create a div. Inside this div, we're going to have 2 items. First of all, we're going to have a span. This span is going to have this text right here. Don't have an account. Now, this is a HTML entity, okay, for this right here, okay. Sorry, for this symbol right here, okay. After that, I'm going to add a link. I'll just import that in from Next link. And this link is going to have an href that's going to go to the sign up page. And the title of this link is going to be sign up now. I'm going to add some Tailwind classes to this item. First of all, I'll give this div a color of text secondary text, a text of center, and a margin vertical of 6. Then for the link, I give the link a class name of margin left of 2, a text of white, a text decoration of underline, so I use underline, and hover of this link. I want it to have a color of text primary. Now we head back to the web page. You can see we have this login page completely styled, okay, and we have this sign up now right here. Now when we click on this sign up now, I want it to take us to the sign up page. So we're going to create a new page. So inside my app folder, I'll create another folder. I'll call this folder sign up. Inside this sign up page, I want to create a page, page.tsx, RFC, create a React snippet, and don't forget to change this to uppercase. I'll get rid of this Now we are basically going to do the same thing we did in our login page. I'll just copy everything from the login page. I'll just copy everything from here. Then I'll paste that right here. Cool. Then I'll click on that link. If I click on this link, it's going to take me to the sign up page right here. I will basically have the same thing. So let's actually update that. The sign up page is going to say not log into Spotify. I'm going to say sign up. Sign up to Spotify. This one is going to say already have an account, sign in now. So let's update that. This one is going to be already have an account, already have an account, sign in now. And the sign up page is going to have one more input. This input is going to be your name, and the link, this link right here is going to go to not sign up this time. It's going to go to login. I'll save that, and with that I'm basically done creating the sign up page and also the login page. So next we're going to start creating this upload song page. I want to click on this icon right here. It's going to take us to the upload song page. So I'll go back to my Visual Studio. I'm going to create another page. I'll call this page upload song, and inside this folder I'm going to create a file called page.tsx rfc. I'll change this to uppercase. I'll just get rid of this. Now this upload page is going to be actually similar to our login page and our sign up page. Okay, so I'm just going to copy the code from our sign up page. I'll just copy everything from here. Then I'll just paste that right here. Okay, I'll save that. I'm going to click on the upload song link. I'll click on this, and that's going to bring us right here to this upload song page. Now just basically update the details. Instead of sign up to Spotify, it's going to be upload to Spotify. And I only need 2 inputs. I'll get rid of this one. This one is going to be title of the song. This one is going to be the artists. Then I'm going to create another 2 other inputs, but these inputs are not going to be of type text. These inputs are going to be of type file. Okay, so I'll give this one a type of file. I'll give this one a type of file. I'll save that. Now when I head back to the web, you can see that we actually have a title, an artist input, then we have these 2 files right here. Now these 2 files right here, you can add placeholders to input to the type of file. So what we are going to do, we're going to add labels to them. So at the top of this input, I want to add a label, and this first one is going to be for audio. Then the ID, I have to pass in an ID that's going to match that for, say, ID, and it's going to be audio. Then next I want to add a label to the next one. Add a label. This one is going to be for the cover image. I'll give it a HTML4 cover. Then for the ID, I'll give it cover. I'll give the label some Tailwind class. I'll give it a class of block, padding vertical of 2, and text of tests secondary. Tests. Then I just copy these utility classes. I paste that on this other label. I'll save that. Check out the output, and you can see we have those 2 right here, but I cannot actually see the text. Why? That's because we've not added titles to them. So this one is going to be for the audio, and this other label is going to be for the cover, the music cover image. I'll save that. Yeah, you can see those labels right now. Next, we just get rid of these items right here and change this to add song. So I'll change this one to add song. Then I'll get rid of this right here. I'll save that. Yeah, that's way better. So let's going to create the hover effects of these cards and of these links right here. Okay, when we hover on them, like when we hover on this one, it's going to show this trash icon. When we hover on this one, it's going to show this play icon. Okay, I actually forgot to do that, so let's quickly do that. So I'll first of all start with my sidebar. Go to my sidebar component. Where's our sidebar component? Over to my sidebar component now. Now in each of these links, I want to add a delete button. I'll start with this first one button, and inside this button, we're going to have a trash icon. I'll say far trash. Just import that in from React icons, and inside this button, we're going to give this a class of test secondary test, position of absolute, a right of 2, a top of 1/2, a negative translate y of 1/2, and a cursor of pointer. I'll save that. And I head back to the sidebar. You can see that we have that delete, that trash icon right here. Okay, but we don't want this trash icon to be visible. We want this to only be visible when we hover on this link. So let's do that. We'll give this by default a display of none, so I'll give it hidden. I only want it to be visible when it's hovered on, so I'll give it a group hover of block. Block. Now when we head back to the sidebar, when we hover on this, we cannot actually see that trash icon. Okay, now after giving it a group of block, what I'm trying to say is that I want, when I hover on the parents container of this div, I want to actually show that icon. Okay, so to actually connect both of them, I'm going to give the parent container as this div that wraps around this container. Where's the div? This div, I'm going to give it a Tailwind class of group. Okay, and also you have to actually add relative to this container, because you are going to position this button absolute to this container. So this container has to have a position of relative. Okay, I'll save that. I want to return back to the web page. When we hover on this, you can see that trash icon. Okay, now you can actually update the rest on your own. It's actually very simple to do that. Cool. Now let's actually work on this button. When we also hover on this card, so we want to actually display this icon right here, this play icon. So let's do that. So I'm going to go back to my, where is the code for that? It's not the sidebar or songs. Inside one of these div, I'll just locate this div. I think it's this one. Inside one of these div, I want to create a button. And the icon inside this button is going to be IOMD play. I just import that in. Now add some Tailwind classes to this button. I give it a BG of primary, a width of 12, a height of 12, 1/3 of full, a display of grid, place items, center, place the items at the center of the grid container. I give it a position of absolute, a bottom of 18, and a right of 5. I'll save that. And we cannot actually see that button. That's because the button, you can see the button right here. That's because we've not given this container a position of relative. Okay, right now the button has given me a position of fixed. So what we are going to do, we're going to give this, the container wraps around it, to give it a position of relative. I'll save that, and it's going to be position absolute to this container. Cool. Remember that you cannot position an element absolute to an element that has a position of static, so you have to give this container a position of relative, so you can position this button absolute to it. Now by default, we don't want the buttons to be this way. We want the button to only show when we hover on this card. Okay, so we're going to, instead of giving it a bottom of 18, where's that bottom? Instead of giving it a bottom of 18, I'm going to give it a bottom of 8. Then opacity of 0. I'll save that. And you're going to notice that we can no longer see that button anymore. Okay, now when we hover on that button, we want that button to actually animate in. So what we are going to do, we're going to add a group, because when we hover on this container, we want to actually add styles to this button. So we're going to give it a group property, group. Then inside the button, we're going to say group hover. Want an opacity of 1, and also group hover. We want a bottom of 18, and save that. And our button is actually there, but we cannot actually see it. I think that's because in Tailwind CSS we don't use 0 to 1 for opacity. We use, I think, 0 to about 100. So I give it opacity of 100 instead. Yeah, I can actually see it right now. Alright, cool. Now I want it to actually animate in. This thing is actually too sharp. I want it to be smooth. So let's work on that. Give it a transition of all, a duration of 300 milliseconds, and is in out. I'll save that. And you can see that smooth transition as it transitions in. Okay. And we can hover on this and see the trash icon. We can hover on this and actually see the play button. I just give you a cursor of pointer to cursor pointer. Yeah. Next, we're going to start creating a music player. Now, for the music player, I want to click on the music in the finished project. You're going to notice that the music starts playing. Okay, this music player is going to actually pop up. So we're going to start creating the UI of this music player. Because this music player is not going to be any library, we're going to create this from scratch and we're going to add all the functionalities. So I'll go back to my Visual Studio. I'm going to create another component. I'll call this component music player .csx RFC. I'll just get rid of this import statement. Then I'll get rid of this div. I'll create another div. This div, I'm going to give it a class. A Tailwind class of fixed, bottom 0, left of 0, width of full, background of black, sorry, not black, text white, padding horizontal of 4, padding vertical of 3, shadow of MD, and a z-index of 50. Next, I want to create another div inside this div. Create another div. I'll give this div a maximum width of 8XL, a width of 95%, MX of auto, display of flex, items. I want to position them center vertically, then justify. I'm going to give them between, justify between. Okay. Now this music player, I'm going to have 3 items. I'm going to have the item at the left hand side, at the middle, and also at the right hand side. So I'm going to start with the left hand side. So for that, I'm going to create another div. I'll create another div. I'll give this div a class of flex, a gap of 4, and items of center. Inside this, I'm going to have an image. So I'm going to import the next image component. And you just import that in. Then the src. So you're going to go into the images folder. I'm just going to go for any cover image. I'll use cover 2.jpeg. I give it an alt text of cover image. Then we have to add a width and height property so that Next.js does not scream. I'll give this 500 of width. Then for the height, I'll also give it 500. Now add some Tailwind utility classes to it. I'll give it a width of 13, a height of 13. Objects, I'm going to use cover. Then rounded, I'll give it MD. I'll save that. Now when I head back to the web page, you cannot actually see that music player component. That's because we've not actually imported that into our page.css first. I'm going to go to our page.css, so I just import that in music player. I'll import that component in. Save that. And now we can actually see that music component right here at the bottom. Cool. And after this image, we're going to create a div tag. Inside this div tag, I'm going to have two paragraph tags. One paragraph tag for the image title, which I just call bicycle. Then the second paragraph tag is going to be for the music artist. I just put the manual there. Now add a Tailwind utility class to this div of text xm. Then for this, I want to add some Tailwind classes. I'll give it a text of white. Also add some classes to this one. I'll give this one a text of secondary text and a font of normal. I'll save that. And you can see we have those items right here at the left hand corner. Cool. So let's add the items that are going to be at the middle. So for that, I'm going to create another div. After this div, I'm going to create another div. This one is going to be for the song controls. So I just label it as song controls. I'll give this div a Tailwind utility class of maximum width of 400 pixels, a width of full, display of flex, items of center, flex direction of column. So I'll give it a flex of col, gap of 3. Cool. Now inside this div, I'm going to create another div. I'll give this div a class of utility class of flex. I want the items inside it to have a display of flex. Then a gap of 4. Inside this, I'm going to create a button tag. This button is going to be our previous button, so it's going to be IOMD skip backward. Then I'll create another button. Drag this down. This one is going to have an icon of IOMD play. Then after that, I'll create another button. This one is going to be for the next button. So go to the next music. So it's going to be IOMD skip forward. I have some styles to it. I'll give this one a Tailwind utility class of text XL and a text of secondary text. I'm going to copy these utility classes and I'll just paste that on this other button right here. Now I'm going to add styles for this middle one, and this one is going to be of BG white, text of XL, text of black, width of thin, height of thin, rounded of full, a display of grid, and a place items of center. I'll save that. Head back to the web page and you can see we have those items we just added right here. And this one is not supposed to be backward. This one is supposed to be backward. This one is supposed to be skip forward. Let me update that. Skip forward, not backward. This one is supposed to be skip forward. Yeah, you can see that right here. Now after this div that houses all these buttons, I'm going to create another div underneath it. I'll give this div a class, a Tailwind class of width of full, display of flex, justify of center, items center, and a gap of 2. Inside this, we're going to create 2 span, and this first span is going to actually have the current time of the, that's the current time of the music, when the music is playing, the current time. So I just pass in the time that I just do 1:45. Then the second span we're going to create is going to contain the length of the music. Let me say this one is 3 minutes 45 seconds. Then between these 2 timestamps, we're going to add this right here. In between the 2 timestamps, we're going to have this right here, this right here in between these 2 timestamps. Okay. So in between them, I'm going to create a div. We'll give this div a Tailwind class of width full. And inside this div, we're going to create an input that's going to be of type range. The minimum is going to be 0. The maximum length is going to be the length, the duration of the music. Now, since we don't have a music yet to play, I'll just leave this blank. Then add a Tailwind class to it. Width of full, outline of none, height of 1, bg of zinc 700 rounded of md appearance of none. Now do accents of white. I'll save that. Head back to the web page and we can actually see that range right here. Okay, you can see that range right here. I'll see these two texts right here, 145, 3:45. Now I'm going to add some styles to the span tags. So I'll give the span tags a Tailwind class of test secondary test, a font of normal, and a text of XM. I'll just copy this Tailwind class. I'll paste on this first span right here. Yeah, it's way better. So finally, we're going to create these items. That's going to be the right hand side of the music player. Okay, these items right here. So let's do that. So I'll go back to my Visual Studio Code. After this div in the middle, I want to create another div. This div is going to be for volume control. So it's going to have the repeat button, but I'll just say volume control. Then I'll comment that off. I'll give this a Tailwind class of flex, items of center, and a gap of 2. First, inside this div, we're going to have a button. Inside this, we're going to have an icon of loop, repeat 1. After this button, we're going to have another button. That's going to have an icon. There's going to be MD outline Q music. Add some Tailwind class to this one. I'll give it a test of secondary test, a text of XL, and a cursor of pointer. After this button, I'm going to create another button. This one is going to have an icon of IOMD volume high. It's going to have similar Tailwind classes as this one. So I'll just copy this, then I'll just paste that right here. Cool. Then finally, we're going to have an input. It's going to be of type range, minimum of 0, maximum of 100. Now add some Tailwind utility classes to this. I'll give it a width of 100 pixels. Outline, I'll give it none. I'll give it a height of 1. BG of zinc 700. Accent of white and appearance of none. I'll save that. Head back to the web page and we see those items right here. But the items are inside this container. We don't want them to be inside this container. I think we are placing them inside the middle div container. I'll just paste them after this div. I'll paste them right here. Yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. This one is going to be at the left hand side. This one is going to be at the middle. While this one is going to be at the right hand side. Okay, so we're going to have the first one. This very first one here. This very first one is going to be at the first one. This one is going to be the middle one, the sound controls. And the volume control is going to be at the one at the right hand side. Okay, just like this. Cool. Now what we've basically done right now is actually create the UI of this music player. Now I want to click on play or next, or even try to use this slider right here. Nothing is really going to work. Okay, and also the volume is not going to work. That's because we've not actually added the functionality. So let's start actually doing that. So first off, I'm going to add an audio tag to my music player because I obviously want to make use of the audio tag, so I'll be able to play audio in this web page. So I'm going to add that audio. I'll close the tag. Then this audio, the SRC is going to point to, for now, it's going to point to a file in my folder, inside my public folder. But later on, we're going to be getting this audio from an API, okay, from a database. But for now, we're going to make use of this one we have locally right here, audio.mp3. So the SRC is going to go into the audio folder, then it's going to go into audio.mp3. Okay, I'll save that. And when I head back to the web page, you're going to notice that we cannot actually see the audio tag in the web page. And that's because when you're making use of audio tag in HTML or JSX, you have to actually specify the control attribute. Okay, that's how the browser is going to understand that you want to actually display the audio to users. You pass in the control attribute. Then when I head back to the web page, you can actually see that audio tag right here. I won't click on this. You notice that this audio actually starts playing. Now you're obviously not going to hear this because I have my microphone plugged in. But now we don't want this music player here. Okay, we want this one we created to be our music player. Okay, a custom music player. So how do we now ensure that when we play this one actually plays? When we actually control the volume of this one, we are controlling the volume of this one. How do we do that? Now we're going to be doing that using a hook in React called the useRefHook, which is basically used for referencing one element in the web page to another element, and I'm going to teach you how to actually use it. Okay, so first off, I'm going to go back to my music player. Up here, I'm going to say const audio ref is equals to use ref. Then the initial value of this use ref is going to be null. Okay, now that we've created this ref, we have to pass this ref to the element we are trying to reference this ref to. So I'm going to go to my audio. I'm going to say this is going to have a ref that is going to be audio ref. Okay, just to ensure that TypeScript doesn't actually throw an error later on when we start making use of this ref, you actually have to pass in a type for this. So right here, I'm going to pass a type. I'm going to say this is either going to be an HTML audio element or it's going to be null. Okay, so what I'm basically telling TypeScript is that when this component mounts, this whose audio ref could be null. Okay, but when the component mounts, it's going to be referenced to this audio element, which means it's going to be an HTML audio element. Okay, cool. So after creating this ref, we're going to create some states. Okay, we're going to actually need this state. So first of all, I'm going to say const is playing, and this is the state we're going to know if the music is playing or if the music is actually paused. I'll say set is music playing is equals to use states from React, and the initial value is going to be false. So after that, I'm going to have a state for the volume of the music. So I'm going to say const volume set volume is equals to use states. Now by default, I'll just make this 100 or 50. And after that, I'll create another state const current time as the time of the music, that is the current time of the music. Set current time is equals to use states, and by default the state is going to be 0. Then also we're going to need the duration of the music. Say const duration set duration is equals to use states. And these are the states we actually need in our music player for now. Okay, so now when we want to actually start playing the music, now when I save this and go back to the web page and we have an error, EBScript file had an error, blah blah blah, you're importing a component that needs useRef. This React hook only works in a client component. Okay, now remember that when you're working with Next.js, when you're making use of states and hooks, you have to actually specify to Next.js that this component is going to be a client component. Okay, so that Next.js know how to handle this as a client component. So to do that, we just go up as usual. We're going to say this is going to be a client component, to say use client. I'll save that, and that should get rid of that error right there. Cool. Now for now, we want to play this music, we have to click on this. Okay, you can notice that the music starts playing, but we don't want to actually use this to actually control the music. We want to use these ones. Okay, so first of all, we're going to work on this play button. Okay, we're going to create a function to toggle, to play and pause the music. So let's first of all create that function. So I'm going to go up here, I'm going to say const toggle play button is equals to, an arrow function that's not going to take any arguments. And before we make use of this audio ref, we always have to check if this audio ref has been sent. Remember that this audio ref can either be the HTML audio element or it could be null. And when you refresh the web page and the component mounts for the first time, that immediate first few seconds it might be null before the HTML audio elements get set to this ref. Okay, so we always have to check if the HTML audio element is actually set. If we don't do that, we might actually get an error. Okay, so to avoid feature bugs, we're going to say if audio ref.current, then return. Now what I'm doing here is that if the audio ref is set, return, but I don't want to return when it's set. I want to return when it's not set. So I'm going to negate this. I'm going to say if no audio ref, then return. We only want to run this code underneath here when the audio ref has been set to an HTML audio element. Then after that, we can check if is plain. Okay, if the audio is actually plain, first of all check that. Now if the audio is plain, when we click on the button, we want to say audio ref dot current dot pause. Okay, which means when the music is playing, when we click on it, you just want to pause it. But if the music is not playing, so I'll say S, and I'll say audio ref dot current dot play the music. I'll save that. What I'm basically doing right here, they are checking if the audio element has been set, audio ref.current. If it's not, we just return. They are checking if the music is already playing. If the music is playing, then when we click on the toggle play button, we want to pause the music. But if the music is not playing, then we want to start playing the music. Okay, cool. Now just copy this function. I'll copy this. I'm going to hook it up to that play button. Where's that play button? Audio.play. I'm going to hook it up to this button. I'm going to say on click. I'll just paste that function right there. I'll go back to the web page. You're going to notice that when we click on this button, I'll click on this, the music starts playing immediately. You can see that the music is playing after we clicked on this button. Now when I click on this again, the music is not going to stop. That's because before we click on the play button, the is playing was set to false. By default, the is playing is false. When we scroll up, this is playing was false. Okay, since this is playing was false, it's going to run this one right here. It's going to say audio ref.current.play. Okay, since this is ref was actually false, it was not playing. Now when we started playing the music, this is playing is still false, which means anytime we run this code, it's always going to say audio ref.current.play. So how do we now ensure that when we actually start playing the music, we actually want to set the is playing to the opposite value? So now we have to set the is playing to the opposite value. For example, now when we start playing the music, we have to set the is playing to playing. So let's do that. So down here, I'm going to say set is playing, is music playing. I'll just, instead of music playing, I'll just get rid of this music playing. I'll say is playing. Set is playing. So is not is playing. Okay. So what this function is going to do, what this setter function is going to do is that if when we have false right here, and we set the music to start playing. When the music starts playing, it's going to set its playing to the opposite value. Now, initially, its playing is going to be false. It's going to set it to true. And also, when we pause the music, its playing is going to be true. Then it's going to set its playing to false. Okay? Now, let's actually test it out. Now, we'll go back to the web page. When we click on this, the music starts playing. Okay? Now, when we click on it again, you're going to notice that the music gets paused. When we click again, the music starts playing. Cool. Now, you see how easy it is to actually link these audio elements to this right here using the use ref hook in React. Now, when we play this music, when the music is playing, and also when the music is paused, you're going to notice that this icon doesn't actually change like this one. Okay, so we're actually going to do that now. We're going to do that using the is playing state we created. One of the reasons we actually created that state. So right here, I'm going to get rid of this play button. I'll just cut this off for now. I'm going to check which icon I want to render. Okay, so I'm going to say is playing. Now, if it's playing, then I want to render the pause button. So I'm going to say, I'll paste that right here. Instead of play, I'm going to call the pause icon from IOMD, React icons. Then if it's not playing, then I want to show the play icon. Okay, I'll save that. Now, when we go back to the web page, you're going to notice that when we click on this, if you can see right now, the pause icon is showing because the music is actually playing. Okay, now to actually pause the music, we'll click on pause. You're going to show the play icon. You see how easy that was. Now, for the rest functionality, like for the details of the music, the previous and next button. We cannot actually do that now because we actually need to be pulling the music from the API before we can actually work on these functionalities. So the functionalities we can actually work on in this music player is going to be this pause play, this one right here, this slider right here to control which part of the song you want to play, and also this timestamps right here. And lastly, we can also work on the queue modal. When we click on it, it's going to open up the queue modal. We can work on that too. Then lastly, we're going to work on the volume. Okay, cool. So first of all, we're going to work on this right here, this timestamp right here. When we're actually playing our music, we want to see the timestamp of our music, the current duration, also the total length of the music. So let's actually do that. So I'm going to go to my code. After this, I'm going to create a use effect because we're actually going to do a side effect. I'm going to say use effect. Now I'm going to pass in an empty dependency array. And the use effect hook in React is what we use to actually perform side effects. Okay. Now, what's actually side effects? And when you make use of an application, the application have life cycles. Okay. Now, the component life cycle in React is that for every application we build, the application have life cycles. Okay. When the component mounts for the first time, when you open the application, when the parts of the application updates, or when the application unmounts, when the application gets closed. Okay. Now, in React to actually handle side effects, we make use of the use effect hook. Okay. Now, right now, this use effect hook is only going to fire once. That's why we have an empty dependency array right here. It's going to fire only when the component mounts. When you open the web page for the first time, this use effect hook is actually going to run. Then after that, it's not going to be run. Now, if you want this use effect hook to rerun, maybe for example, now you want this use effect hook to rerun when this is playing changes from false to true or true to false, you're going to pass in that explain right here is playing as a dependency. That way, the use effect hook is going to run when the component mounts, and also is going to run when this explain value gets updated. Okay, but for now, we don't want any dependency in our use effect hook dependency array. So in here, I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to say const audio. I'm going to create an audio instance of my audio ref. It's equals to audio ref.current. Then I'm going to check if the audio is actually set. If this variable is set, then I want to actually run this code. But if it's not set, I just negate it. If this audio variable is not set, I just want to return. Okay. Now after that, I'm going to create a function called update time, which is equals to an arrow function. Now, what we actually want to do in this function is that when this component mounts, that's why we're making use of a use effect hook. We want to get some properties from this audio right here, from this music, this audio input right here. Okay. First of all, I want to get the duration of the music that is inside this audio. This audio is actually playing, and not just the duration. We also want to get the current timestamp of the music. That's we want to get an update. If the music is just started playing, it's going to be at 1 second, 2 seconds. We want to actually get the current time. I want to be able to track it. So to do that, we're going to use an event listener. So down here, I'm going to say audio.add event listener. Then inside this event listener, I'm going to listen for a time updates. Okay, that's when the time of the music is updated. Now, when the time of the music is updated, I want to run this function updates time. Okay. Now, after that, not just that, we also want to get the duration. So I'll say audio.add event listener. I'll say loaded metadata. Then when the metadata is loaded, I want to run the function update time. Okay, cool. Now, anytime you run this function, then I want to set my current time to the audio.the current time of the audio. We are basically just updating the song every second. Okay, that's what this line of code is going to do. When the music is playing, it's going to keep track of it and be updating our UI according to the length of the song. If the song is at first second, the UI is going to be showing first second. If the song is at 10 seconds, the UI is going to show 10 seconds. Okay, so after that, I'm going to set our duration to audio.duration or to 0. And we have an error here. Argument of type number is not assignable to parameter of type set undefined. Means our initial value is undefined. Yeah, our initial value is undefined. By default, I want this to be 0. Okay. Then if the audio duration is not getting from the metadata, I want the duration of the music by default to be 0. Okay. So I want to scroll down. I want to look for those controls right here. Then where are those timestamps we created, those span tags we created? Instead of this time right here, we're going to pass in our current time. And instead of this one as our duration, we had to go there, we'll pass in our duration. I'll save that. I head back to the web page. I'm going to notice that when I refresh the web, I just refresh the web page. Then when I start playing the song, you're going to notice that this one actually starts counting. You can notice that it's actually counting. And this one, the total seconds of the time is 149 seconds. But obviously, we don't want the format of the time to be in seconds. Okay, we want it to be in minutes and seconds. Okay, we have to create a format for it. So I'm going to go to my Visual Studio Code and create a function to actually format the timestamp. So I just do that down here. Down here, I'm going to say const format time is equals to an arrow function. Now, anytime we call this function, it's going to take a value. Now, I just call this value time. Now, this value is going to be of type number. Now, first off, I'm going to format the minutes side. I'll say const minutes is equals to math.floor time divided by 60. To actually convert seconds to minutes, you have to actually divide it by 60. For example, now you have 60 seconds, you want to convert it to minutes. It's going to be 60 divided by 60, which is going to be 1 minute. So we've gotten the minutes. Then we'll say const seconds is equals to math.floor. The time we are passing in, then 60. Then we're going to convert it to a string, then pad start to 0, then a semicolon. Cool. Then anytime we call this format time function, we want to return the time in this format. Return. I'll use a backticks. I'll say $. I'll pass in the minutes. Then I'll say colon. Then I'll pass in the seconds. Add a semicolon. I'll save that. Now, anytime we call this function, it's going to take the time we pass into. It's going to convert the left hand side to minutes. It's going to convert the right hand side to seconds like this. And it's going to actually display two values. It's going to display it in such a way that if we have 4 minutes and 5 seconds, it's going to be 4 minutes. Then the second is going to be, it's not going to be 5, it's going to be 0.5. That's why we added this pad start right here. Okay. Then when I go down here, before I call this right here, instead of me just calling duration, I'm going to cut this off. Then I'll say format time. Then I'll paste that in here. Okay. Same thing with this one. I'll cut this off. I'll say format time. Then I'll pass that in here. Cool. Now when I head back to the web page, you can see that the time is actually formatted. And when we start playing, you can see how good this is now actually looking. So next, we're going to work on this one right here. When we actually use this range right here, we want to use this to actually adjust the song. Okay, so let's actually do that. And it's actually very simple. So let's actually do it. So I just go up here. I'll create another function. Const. I'll call this function handle seek. It's equals to an arrow function. This function is going to take an event, and this event is going to be react.change event. Okay, it's going to be HTML input element. Now I want to set the value of our event to a variable. Say const the new time is equals to event.target the value. I'll just put this inside a pass float. So I'll say pass float. I'll pass that in here. Then I'll say if audio.ref.current. I only want to run this if the audio.ref.current, if the audio has been set to the ref. Then I'll say audio.ref.current. I'll set the current time. Then I'll set that current time to the new time from our event. Okay, then I'm going to set the current time to new time. Now I have to actually hook up this function to that input element. So I just scroll down. Where's that input element, which is going to be, I think it's right here. This one right here. This input element right here. Then up here, I'm going to say on change. Then I'm going to say handle seek. Remember I said that we're going to set the maximum value of this input to the duration of our music. So I'll just pass in the duration right here. Then the value of this input, the value is going to be current time. Okay. What I'm actually doing right here is that I'm linking this input to the actual audio. That way we can use this input to actually control the audio. Okay. We can use, due to this input, what this actually does. That's what we're actually doing. Okay, you can see right now when we increase this one, the input actually increases. When we decrease, the input actually decreases too. And we have an error, so I'll just refresh the web page. I think it's because we just added that event listener. Cool, that's actually gone. You can see right now when we increase, it reduces. You can see it actually linked to it. Now when we start playing the music, you can see right now that when this one is actually increasing, this one is increasing too. Okay, now when I take this one to the middle, when I click on here, you see this one actually increase. When I take this one to the ending, this one goes to the ending too. So we are done with this one. So next, we actually want to actually increase the volume. Now when I actually adjust the volume right here, now to check the volume of this one, you just hover on this right here. You can see the volume right here. Okay, now this is actually the volume of this audio tag. Okay, you can mute, take it to 0 to mute, you get. But when I'm increasing and reducing the volume of this audio, is not actually linked to this one. So let's actually do that too. So to do that, I'm going to create another function up here. I just create another function. Up here, I'll create another function. Say const. I'll call this function handle volume. Sorry, volume change. Cost one arrow function. This is also going to take a change event, and the type is going to be react.change event. Then we'll just pass in the HTML input element in there, so TypeScript doesn't scream at us. Then in here, I'm going to set a variable. I'm going to say const volume is equals to pass int. And I'll pass in the event of targets. I want to actually get the value, so that value. And the reason I'm adding this pass int is because when we get this event from the input, it's going to come as a string, so we have to convert it to a number. Okay, now up here we use pass float. Now when we get, for example, now we get 12.33 from our input, this particular function, this pass is going to convert this to 12. Okay, if we get it as a string as 12.33, it's going to convert it to 12. That's pass int. We're going to change it to the closest integer, which is 12. Okay, if it's 12.75, it's going to change it to 13. Okay, now for this pass float, the reason I use pass float here is I want to get the exact value. Okay, so if I have something like 30.33 from the input and I say pass float, it's going to convert it to a number of 13.33. It's not going to get rid of this other part right here. Okay, that's what the pass float is going to actually do. After that, I'm going to set my volume to volume. Let me just call this volume. We already have a state called volume. Okay, this state we create here for our volume, this state right here. But we're actually not done yet. We have to actually set this volume to the audio ref. Okay, so say if audio ref dot current, then we're going to say audio ref dot current dot volume is equals to volume, this volume variable right here, divided by 100. I'll save that. Now the reason I'm dividing this by 100 is that the built-in audio element in HTML goes from 0 to 0.1, 0.2 to 1. So the maximum value is 1 and the minimum value is 0. But for our state, for this input right here, the minimum value is 0, the maximum value is 100. Okay, so when we have this value right here, if we have 75 right here, it's going to be 0.75 for our audio element. Okay, so we have to actually divide this. So we have to actually divide this value by 100 to actually pass this value to our audio ref. Okay, cool. So I'm going to copy this right here. Then I'm going to scroll down, actually pass this to this volume control right here. Where is that input? So up here, I'm going to say on change. I'll just paste that right here, handle volume change. And the value is going to be volume. Okay, so I just format the document I'll save that. I'll head back to the web page. Now, you're going to notice that when I reduce the volume, we're not going to notice this, but when I get to 0, we're going to notice that this is actually muted, okay? And also when we increase it again, it's going to unmute it. And when we get to 0 again, it's going to be muted, which means this value right here is actually controlling the volume of this audio input, okay? But we are not actually done here. We have to actually ensure that this state here is always in sync with this audio right here, okay? So we're going to add a side effect. So down here, after this side effect, I'm going to create another side effect. I'm going to say use effects. Now this time we're going to pass in a dependency, okay? Now this dependency is going to be our volume. Now anytime our volume actually changes, we want to actually rerun this use effect hook, okay? So inside this use effect hook, first of all, I'm going to check. I'm going to say if audio ref dot current, if the audio ref has been set, then I'm going to say audio ref dot current value dot, I want to get the volume. Then I want to set the volume to our volume state divided by 100. Remember that we always have to divide by 100 to actually convert it to the volume of an audio input. So I'll save that. Now when I head back to the web page, now you're not going to notice anything, but this is always going to ensure that this audio is always in sync with this right here, okay? Now when I take this to 0, you're going to notice right now that this is actually muted. When I take it away from 0, it's going to be unmuted. Cool. So the last logic we're going to implement for this music player in this part is going to be for this to mute and actually unmute the video, okay? Now when we mute the video, we want the volume to go to 0, and when we unmute it, we want the volume to go to the initial volume it was before we actually muted it, okay? So first of all, we're going to create a new state. I'll call this state, I'll just call this state const previous volume, then set previous volume is equals to the use state hook from React, and by default the previous volume is going to be 0. Then I'm going to create a function to actually mute and unmute it. So after this function, create another function, say const toggle mute is equals to an arrow function. Now first of all, I want to check if the volume is equals to 0, is equivalent to 0. Then what we are going to do here is that we're going to unmute the music, okay? Because if the volume is actually equals to 0, which means we have actually muted it before, so we just unmute the music. So I'm going to set the volume to previous volume, okay? Now we want to set the volume of our state, like the volume of the music, to the previous volume it was before it was muted, okay? Then we have to set it to the audio ref. So if audio ref dot current, and I'll say audio ref dot current dot volume is equals to previous volume divided by 100. Now this code we just wrote is to actually unmute the music, okay? So if the volume is not equals to 0, which means we're actually playing the music when we click on the mute button, maybe we are playing at 75% or 100% volume, then we're going to say else, and this is where we're actually going to mute the music. So I'll say mute music. Then first of all, I'm going to set my previous volume state to volume, okay? And the reason I'm doing this is because when we actually want to mute the music, we actually want to know the initial state of the volume. For example, now I'm playing at 75 or 100%, so I have to know the volume I was playing at, the user was playing at, before the user clicked on the mute button. That way, when the user unmutes the music, it's going to go to that previous volume. It's not going to start from another volume. So if I'm playing at 75% and I mute, when I unmute, it's going to go back to 75%. So that's why I created this previous volume state, okay? And I'm getting this volume state and setting the previous volume state to the current volume state. Then after that, I'm going to set the volume state to 0. Then after setting the volume state to 0, I'm going to set the audio ref. I'll check if the audio is current. If the ref has been set, I'll say audio ref dot current dot volume, and I'll set it to 0. Now that we have written this function, we have to actually hook up this function to a button. So I just copy the name of this function. I'll scroll down. Where's that mute icon, that mute button we created? It's going to be the mute button. Where's the mute button? One. I think it's this one right here. Okay. Then I'll just say on click of this button. On click. I want to run this function right here. Toggle mute. Okay. I'll save that. And when I head back to the web page, when I mute this music, I'm going to notice right now that this is actually muted right here. Okay. Now when I click on it again, it's going to unmute it right here. You can see right there. Okay. Cool. But this one is not actually updating, so let's actually work on that. So when we click on mute, it's going to show the mute, this icon with a stroke. So let's do that. So I'll just take this button, I'll get rid of this button, then I'll check if the volume is equal to 0. If volume is equivalent to 0, which means it's actually muted. Okay. Then I'm going to display the volume of icon. I'll just import that in. As if the volume is not equal to 0, then I want to display this volume high button. I'll format the documents. I'll save that. And when I return back to the web page, when I click on this, you can see we have this right here. You see the music is actually muted. Now when I click on it again, it's going to go back. So if I take this to 100 and I mute and I unmute, it's going to go back to 100. Cool. And you can play the music. You can actually control the part of the music you want to play. You can control that. You can mute the music. You can increase and decrease the volume. Okay, cool. So now that we've linked our audio elements to this, our custom audio right here, we can actually use this to actually play the song. We can control the song right here. And also, we can also control the volume right here. Okay. So now that we have done all that, so next we can actually get rid of this. So I'll just pause this. We can actually get rid of this. To do that, it's very simple. We just scroll down, then we just get rid of these controls right here. Okay, just get rid of that. Now that's going to ensure that we can actually see the audio elements in the UI, but we can actually still play the song. Okay, so next we're going to work on the queue list mode. I won't click on this. It's going to open up this queue list mode, and they won't click on it again. It's going to close it back up. But before we start doing that, I'm going to actually explain something. And when we created this right here, this music player, we created state inside this music player. We created volume state, current time, duration. Now this state we created right here, this state, we can only use this state inside this component. Okay, they are component state. It can only be maintained inside a component. Now when we check out this modal, you can notice that this modal has been opened up by another component. This modal is its own component, but this modal has been opened by a button inside another component, this music player component. Okay, so I'm actually going to teach you how to manage state globally. Now there are different ways to manage state globally in a React application. We can make use of libraries like Redux Toolkit, Zostand, but for this project I'm going to be making use of the built-in method, which is a context API. Okay, so I'm going to teach you how to do that. So first of all, we're going to create our queue component. So I'll create a new component. I'll call this queue.csx RFC. I'll get rid of this. Now create a div. I give this a position of fixed, a top of 15, right of 15, z index of 50, maximum width of 300 pixels, width of full, height of 75 VH, BG of black, border of 1, padding of 4, overflow, y of auto, then I'll give it a rounded of MD. I'm going to save this and import this component to our page.css. So in here, I'll just import that and I'll say Q. I just import that in. When I head back to the web page, you can actually see that modal right here. You can see that black modal right here. Okay, it's actually too close to the top. I want to bring it down a bit. Instead of top of 50, I'll do it top of 80. Yeah, this is actually better. Now inside this div, we're going to have a h2 tag, which is simply going to say Q. After that, we're going to have a div. We'll give this div a margin top of 8. And inside this div, we're going to have a h2 tag that's going to say now plain. We're going to add some utility classes to this. So I'll give this a text of white, font of bold, and a margin bottom of 3. After this h2 tag, we're going to have a div. And inside this div, we're going to have an image in there. I just import that from next image. Then for the SRC, it's going to go into the images folder. We're going to go into the images folder. Then it's going to go for cover theory.jpg. I'll pass in a width property of 300. I'll pass in a height property of 300. Then lastly, we're going to add an auth property. The auth property is going to be, I'm just say Q image. And after this image, we're going to have another div. Inside this, we're going to have 2 paragraph tags. The first paragraph tag is going to be the music we actually play. I just call this diamond. Then for the title, I just say title of the musician. I just use solid diamond. Now I'm basically just writing random values here. Now we're actually going to be getting this data from the backend. Okay, so for now, we're going to use random values. I'm going to add some Tailwind classes to this. I'm going to start with the div container. I'll give this a position of relative. I'll give this a display of flex, items center, gap of 2, cursor of pointer, margin bottom of 2, padding of 2, rounded of LG, and a hover color. When we hover on this, I want to give this a BG of hover. And for the image, we're going to give the image a width of 10, height of 10, object of cover, and a rounded of MD. Then we're going to add styles to this one too. I'll give this one a class of text primary and a font of semi-bold. Then for this one, we're going to give it a text of XM and a text color of text secondary text. I can actually see that right here. When we hover on it, you see how good looking this actually is. I said cursor of pointer. What am I saying right there? Let me check that right back. Just check this cursor of pointer. Cursor alias, not cursor alias, cursor of pointer. Save that. Yeah. So I just copy this container. I just copy this div right here. I just drag that down one more time. Drag this down. And the title of this is not going to be not playing or playing now. It's going to be Q list. Then I just get rid of that text primary and give this one a text of whites. And you can see right here how good this is actually looking. So by default, we don't want this modal to be open, okay? We want a situation when we click on this modal is going to open. When we click on it again, it's going to close. And that's where global state actually comes in, okay? Now, if I want to actually use context API, I'm going to have to use that context API in this page.css file. This right now is like a global page that holds all the components, okay? But the problem is that, remember that when you want to use a hook in Next.js, you have to actually specify that this is going to be a client component. Now, if I do that, then my entire application is going to be a client component. Now, in a real world application, it's not actually ideal to come to your page.css file and say use client. Now, what this is going to do is that it's going to convert this your home page, the entirety of your home page to a client component, and also it's going to convert every component inside this home page to client components. Okay, now this actually beats the need to actually use Next.js in the first place. Okay, because Next.js, you use Next.js for server rendering because there could be content in the home page. Man, in this content right now, we don't have content that we want to be rendered on the server because you're basically building a music streaming website. But in an application, maybe say you have a blog website, you can have a situation where you want to actually render content in the home page for SEO purposes. Okay, so doing this, use clients, going to convert your home page to a client component, which means you cannot render content in the server. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this. So instead of using this, what we are going to do, we're going to create our own layout. Remember I said that I'm going to teach you how to create your own layout. So in my root folder, I'm going to create another folder. I'll call this folder layouts. And inside this layout folder, I'm going to create a file. I call this file front end layouts. Tailwind.tsx. And let's see, I'll just get rid of this. Now all I have to do is to copy everything from my page.tsx file and just paste them right here. So I'll go to my page.tsx file. I'm just going to copy everything from here. Then I'll take that to my frontend layout. Then I'll just paste that right here. And we're also going to copy the import statement. I'll just copy this. Then I'll paste that up here. Okay. Now we don't need this songs component in here. So I'm going to get rid of this. Now because the songs is going to be the page. Say for example, now we have multiple pages. For our project right now, we have just the home page. Say we have profile pages. Now when we go to that profile page, we'll click on profile. When I click on profile of a user, I'm going to have this sidebar right here. I'm going to have this Navbar. I'm going to have this music player and also this queue. The only thing that is going to change is going to be this right here, this main content right here. Okay, so this main content is not part of the layout. These are parts of the layout, but this is not supposed to be part of the layout because this is just going to be a page. It's not a component. We actually want to be persistent across all pages. So what we are going to do, we just get rid of that. I already got rid of that. That also I already got rid of that. Because that also is going to be in the home page. Now this layers component is going to take a prop called children, and this is going to have a type. Now if you are using JavaScript, you don't have to do this, but if you are using TypeScript, you always have to tell the component that is receiving a prop the type of prop is actually receiving. Now this is going to be a read only children react node. Click on that. Cool. And you can see it right here. Read only children react node. So now that we've actually created this layout file, how do we actually use this layout file? Okay, so I'm going to go to my page.tsx, which is my home page, and actually use this layout. I'm going to get rid of this. We're no longer importing the songs here. I'll save that. I'm going to go back to my page.tsx file. Now I'll get rid of these other items right here. I'll get rid of all this. I'll get rid of this. Now when I save that and head back to the web page, you're going to notice that we no longer have our sidebar, our navbar, and also our music player and our Modal. It's no longer there. Okay, so let's actually add that layout to this page. So I just cut everything up from here. Then I'll say frontend layout. I'll import that in. Then in between this frontend layout, I'm going to paste this right here. Okay, now what's going to happen right here is that what we just paste, anything that will paste in between the opening frontend layout tag and the closing frontend layout tag, anything we put in between them are going to be displayed right here. So down here, instead of outputting the all songs, we'll just output the children. So whatever content this frontend layout wraps and when we use the frontend layout are going to be outputted right here. Okay, so I'll save that. I'll just save that. I want to head back to the web page. You can see right now that those items are actually back. Okay, now we actually have our layout. Okay, cool. So I'll just get rid of everything here. So now we can actually create our global state in this frontend layout. So let's do that. So up here, I'm going to say const player context is equals to create context. I just import that from React. Then by default, the value is going to be undefined. I'll format the document. And this is how you actually create a context in React. After creating this player context, we have to wrap everything in this return statement inside this player context provider. Okay, so I just cut everything up from here. Then I'll say player context dot provider. Then in between the opening player context provider and the closing player context provider, I'll just paste that right here. Then I'm going to say the value. Now what this simply means is that every component inside this player context provider is going to have access to whatever state I pass to as value to this. Okay, so let's actually create a state. I want to create a state up here. I want to say const is Modal open or let me say Q Modal open, Q Modal open, then set Q Modal open is equals to use state hook from React, and by default this state is going to be false. Then we can pass this state to this player context as a provider. Okay, so I'm going to say the value first of all is Q Modal open. Then I can pass the setter function set Q Modal open. All right, cool. Now we are obviously going to get an error. The reason the error we are getting is actually a TypeScript error, because TypeScript wants to know the data type that this player context provider is going to accept, because we don't want a situation where we created a state right here. We say it's Modal open and set is Modal open and it's false. It's actually Boolean. Then we want to make use of this component in our application. We now accidentally set it to a string. Now this actually happens when you use JavaScript, but TypeScript is very strict to ensure we don't make such mistakes. So TypeScript wants to know the data type of the value you are passing to this context provider. Okay, so let's actually create that type. So up here I'm going to create that type. I'm going to say type player context type, and the first value we added is this SQ modal. So I'm going to copy this SQ modal, I'll paste that right here, and this is going to be a boolean, while this is the setter function. So I'm going to copy this, then I'll paste that underneath here. Now the setter function is going to be of type React dot dispatch React dot set state action, and we are setting the states to a boolean. Now after creating the context, we can pass the context to this when we created the context. Okay, so down here I'm going to say this is going to be of type player context, and you're going to notice that we still have an error. When we hover on this, it's going to say arguments of type undefined is not assignable to parameter of type player context type. Right now we are saying this create context is going to be always be of player context, which means always going to have this is Modal open or this set Q Modal open can never be undefined. Okay, but when the component has not mounted completely, this context could be undefined. So you actually have to tell TypeScript that this could be undefined or it could be player context type. So how do we do that? So we just come over here and we're going to say this is either going to be a player context type or it's going to be undefined, and that's going to get rid of that error. And when we scroll down, we no longer have any TypeScript error. Okay, cool. Now without TypeScript, this would have been easier. We just created our context, then we just create our states and pass our states to our context providers as values. But TypeScript is very important because TypeScript is actually meant to actually prevent future bugs and error in your application. So you should actually learn how to code using TypeScript. So now that we are done, every component that this player context provider wraps around is going to have access to these state values right here. Okay, this Navbar, this Sidebar, all of them, and also these children right here, which means these items right here, that this layout, this front-end layout wraps around, all are going to have access to these states right here. Okay, so these states right now are global states for these components. Cool. So finally, the very last thing we're going to do, we're going to export the context. That way we can be able to make use of that context in other parts of the application. So I'll say export const player context. Now let's actually make use of this context we just created. So I'm going to go to my key.css where I write my actual modal. Then up here I'm going to say const context is equals to use context. I'm going to import use context from React. Okay, I want to use a context. Now what context do I want to use? Remember that we exported this context right here, export const player context. So this is the context I actually want to use. That's why we actually exported it. So what context do I want to use? I want to make use of the player context. Then I'll just import that in. Okay, so after that we have to check if the context is undefined. Remember that the context can either be the player context type or undefined. So we're going to say if no context, if the context is undefined, if no context, then show new error. The error is going to be player context must be within a provider. And this is also going to throw an error when we try to use this context in a component that this context is not actually wrapped around. You know that this context provider wraps around everything else. So when we try to use a context, maybe we are trying to make use of this context in our login page, which does not have this context provider wraps around it, it's actually going to throw that error too. Okay, so that's why we are saying throw new error. Then down here we can say const. I'm going to destructure the values is equals to context. So right here we can actually destructure the values of this context. So the value I want is Q modal open. That's simple. Then I'm going to check if the modal is open or if it's not open. So I'm going to say if, I'll negate it. If the modal is not open, if this is false, then I just want to return null. I'll save that. And when I head back to the web page and we have an error, we didn't pass a use client directive to this component right here. Up here I'm going to say use clients. Same thing I'm going to do for my queue because I'm making use of the context here. I'll just say use clients. I'll save that. And that should get rid of those error right here. Cool. And you can see we don't have that modal right here, okay, because we said that if the state is set to false, return null. So when I go to my front-end layout, because these are global states now, and I change this to true, I save that. When I head back to the web, you can see now we are actually going to see that modal right here. Very simple. So what we want to do is that we want to actually create a function. We want to create a function and hook up that function to this button. So we can use this function to actually toggle the modal. So let's do that. So we're going to go to our music player components and actually do the same thing we did right here. So I just copy this. I want to get the context. So I copy this. I'll just go to my music player and I'll paste that. We have lots of code here, so I just go all the way up. I'll go all the way up. I'll paste that after these states. I just paste that right here. Then I'll just import use context from React. Import use context. Import the player context. And import player context. Alright, cool. So we need both the isQModal open and also the setter function. So I'm going to destructure that to set QModal open. Okay. Then I'm going to scroll down, actually hook this up to that button. I'll just scroll down. Where is that button? That Q music. I think it's this button right here. So we're going to add an event handler right here. So I'm going to say onClick. I want to run a function that's going to set QModal open. So is QModal open. Then we'll just negate this, okay? Just negate this. It's basically going to set it to the opposite value, basically just toggling the state. So when I head back to the web, when I click on this, it's going to open up this module. When I click on this again, it's actually going to close up this module. So the next part we're going to start working on is the part where we actually start communicating with our Supabase server. We're going to create a new Supabase server. We're going to actually learn how to upload songs to the Supabase server, get those songs to our application, and also we're going to learn Supabase authentication in the next part. Now, if you enjoyed this first part and you'd like to see the full stack build, do well to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you'll be amongst the first persons that get notified when I drop the full stack build. So I'll see you in the next video.